Hello, welcome to the Byron Show. Today we are going to talk about corruption and also understand it from a different perspective by one of us, an African scholar, Mr. Abisalom Oloch Owayo. Thank you so much. Stay tuned. Mr. Absalom, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Byron.
Yes.
Yes.
Introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Absalom Oloch, a philosopher come religionist. I can say that I have a lot of interest in philosophical understanding of issues,
Yes.
more so specifically dealing with issues to do with the religion and how it impacts
Yes.
in various components of life.
Yes.
Yeah, but at the same time, I've had an opportunity to be in the political processes in Kenya.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been a member of one of the political parties
Yes.
that used to be very active in early 90s, that is Social Democratic Party.
SDP.
SDP.
Yes.
Yeah, so that is who I am in summary.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abisalom.
Yeah.
So you said you belong to one of the political parties in Kenya.
Yes.
That is the Social Democratic Party, SDP.
Yes.
How was it, you being a member of that party?
It was highly stimulating in the sense that by that time the party was being driven by ideology.
Yes.
And that is social democracy.
Yes.
Yeah, and it had its own philosophical roots in the sense that we were looking at the social justice in relation to certain particular social injustices that were happening in the country.
Just to mention one.
Yeah, for example, the youth fund.
Yes.
Yeah, how it was being managed and distributed was a question. And we, as the Bureau of Young Social Democrats within the party,
Yeah.
we were looking into, do we really have a strong law in terms of knowing how the fund is being distributed from the central government to the grassroots level. So we will see certain particular social injustices with regard to the distribution of that youth fund. And so we took it upon ourselves to really look into the political processes that were involved for the youths to get the fund.
So you said something about social injustices.
Yes.
Was this a result of corruption, or was it a result of misappropriation of funds that is meant for the youths?
Basically, what I can say is that when we talk of corruption,
Yes.
it is a multifaceted concept.
Yes.
In the sense that it might be defined as misappropriation of funds by public or officials.
Yes.
But at the same time, we would look at it from various dimensions.
Yes.
For example, when the money is allocated by the central government
Yes.
to the various officers that ought to be managing that money as it is transferred to the grassroots level for the usage of that money by the youths,
Yes.
then we find that in the due course of that process of it going down, there are certain particular state officials that will try to misappropriate it for their self-gain.
Yes.
Nevertheless, we cannot say that corruption is just at that level, but what we can also say that when it is given also to the youth,
Yes.
then it depends with the psychological preparedness of those youths. And that is what can lead to what we call cognitive corruption,
Yes.
whereby the distorted judgment in terms of how that fund should be used. So
Yes.
corruption is at various levels.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've talked about cognitive corruption
Yes.
and as a distortion of judgment.
Yes.
So would you mean that corruption is a form of higher competition even before one gets to a public office?
That is just a component of it,
Yes.
because corruption is in various forms and sizes.
Yeah.
Now, what I basically mean is that the level to which you exercise corruption might depend with an individual and the resources that are at your disposal.
Yes.
And so when the fund for public use is being allocated from the central government down to the grassroots level,
Yes.
it all depends with which particular office do you occupy. And that will determine the much you can get. And might be, to that extent, there is that element of competition, because those who are at the higher office might look into it that they need to get certain amount of money, which might be bigger than. But the element of also competing for that money is also there. So to a given extent, there is competition in terms of exercising corruption.
So will this lead to a state of auto-corruption in terms of now, when I get this chance, I must take away whatever belongs to me, or whatever belongs to me and my community, or whatever belongs to me, whatever I feel, because I'm not mandated to it.
Yes.
But I find my dirty tricks to take this one home with me and my cronies and so relatives and others.
Yeah, the auto-corruption is a concept that ought to be unpacked in the sense that the corrupt and the corruptee should be properly be explained. But at a certain point, you find that the corrupt and the corruptee is one individual, whereby the way you judge in terms of how the money should be distributed, and the way you think of how much you should get out of it. So the element of you being corrupt and at the same time corrupt is there. So that is the essence of the understanding of auto-corruption.
But don't you think that from the aspect of auto-corruption, if you want to borrow it, maybe when from home, let me say from home, a parent gives a child a sweet to go to school. Is that not one of the ways of corrupting the mind of this child?
Yes, of course, what you are saying is true. But corruption is also taking place at a familial setting.
Yes.
In the sense that even the cultural understanding of a male person in a relation vis-a-vis the cultural understanding of female person. By the virtue of the fact that the culture puts a lot of premium on the boy child, will give that child a given understanding that might lead to you being a bully husband in the house. Because your judgment of who you are is distorted by the cultural way of understanding yourself, which means you are not likely to give a female person that kind of time and fairness when it comes to decision making. So that is also another element of corruption, which is cognitive corruption, because now it is as if the culture is giving you more power than the female person. So that element of corruption is there at the familial level and at the society level.
Yes.
Yeah. But
so, would you dispute? Would you agree if I say that somebody is corrupt is not stupid, or if you're not corrupt, you are stupid?
Yeah, these narratives are developed in the community, in the society. It is a social construction of society in terms of how they define the benefits of corruption, because some are saying that corruption is beneficial in the sense that they have seen some who have grown rich out of corruption.
Yes.
So they might say if you are in a position of leadership and you have failed to amass wealth for yourself, they might consider you to be stupid in a way. But it all depends with your moral values as a person, what I might call self-moral autonomy, how you generate your moral values and how you execute your responsibilities.
Yes.
But the society can develop that narrative and say that you are stupid because you have failed to amass wealth.
Okay, Mr. Bisalom, there's this say that goes that we survive by corruption, but we also perish by this very corruption. What is your take about this?
Yeah, my take about that is that it boils down to the philosophy of redemption and martyrdom, whereby being corrupt can redeem you from poverty, but at the same time, when you are taken through legal processes, then you might perish. And so,
like the Ingiritas.
Yes. And so the philosophy of redemption and martyrdom is visible in that process, because people might see you that you have been redeemed through being corrupt and you are now somebody in the society when it comes to the economic status. But when you are taken to the courts to answer how you acquired the wealth, then it can lead to your death also economically. So it all depends with how you are going to navigate around the issues of exercising corruption.
So will you, to the extent that we are as a country now, Kenya as a country now, what will we say about the youths? Because it is us, the youths, who are we are so much dominated by those in authority, those in power, to an extent that we don't see that they are stealing from us. To an extent, we don't see that something is a mess. What would you say about our intellectual partisans in terms of not bringing them to book
Yes.
not bringing them to their leadership responsibilities.
Yes.
To me, I will find that a very dogmatic side of being partisan.
Yes.
I don't know how you view this.
Yeah, my take on it is that we have failed to develop critical thinking of the citizenry.
Yes.
In the sense that the scholars should know that they have a duty in terms of promoting the understanding of the citizens on issues to do with corruption.
Yes.
Now, when they fail to do that duty, then it means the citizens will be in the dark and not knowing some of the things they ought to be doing, like social audit, in terms of knowing how service delivery should be done. Things like the community scorecards with regard to what is it that has been done and what is it that has not been done by the government. And so, to a given extent, it is because of what you have said, that dogmatic partisanship of
Yes.
scholars, in the
Yes.
sense that some scholars are beneficiaries of those corrupt exercises. So they might play that dogmatic partisanship because it is benefiting them. So they might fail to execute their duty of also educating the citizens in terms of knowing how they ought to be reacting to corruption when
Okay.
it is seen anywhere or spotted in any office.
So I've heard you mention something like lack of information,
Yes.
or as who are enlightened, who have gone to higher system of education, not being ready to educate others about this vice.
Yes.
So would we say that being ignorant or being reluctant to put our leaders into account is also contributing to this vice? So, Mr. Bisalom, you've said that maybe lack of information or failure on the part of these scholars to educate the society
Yes.
will also lead to could also be encouraging this vice of corruption.
Yes.
So, would you say that ignorance or reluctance on the side of the electorates,
Yes.
by not bringing their leaders into account, will also contribute largely to this vice of corruption?
Yes, I believe that that element of ignorance
Yes.
on the part of the citizen
Yeah.
is a contributing factor towards corruption getting to higher scales. In the sense that when you lack information in terms of how to go about the issues of corruption,
Yes.
then there is no way out. You can really dig deep into knowing when corruption happened and what ought to be done. And so I tend to think it is also our reading culture in Kenya, whereby the citizens are not geared towards reading so that they can know their role and their responsibility as the citizen with regard to how they need to understand the service delivery and what happens
But
in the process.
Mr. Bisalom, just if you excuse me,
Yes.
we have institutions like
Yes.
the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission.
Okay.
What have they done as an institution so that we could see those who are charged in law courts
Yes.
serve their jail sentence? I don't think if that institution is doing much.
Yeah, of course, we can say they're not doing much, but at the same time, there is work that they're doing, because the element of creating awareness in terms of knowing certain particular institutions that are corrupt, and even also in terms of letting us know which particular governance institutions are more corrupt than others.
Yes.
But when it comes to the element of now having a prosecutor role, or whereby they can take people to court and make sure that they are charged and jailed,
Yes.
I tend to think that is where they are missing it. But in terms of creating awareness with regard to how corruption is rampant in Kenya, at least we can give them a plus.
They have a scorecard.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The other day, the Deputy President of Kenya, Mr. Dr. William Samoei Ruto,
Yes.
said that Kenya is a Christian nation.
Yes.
But this one did not go well with the atheists,
Yes.
who say that is a religious arrogance.
Yes.
So I am in a state of wonder
Yes.
that if Kenya is a Christian nation,
Yes.
how have our morals as a country or as a people
Yes.
improved us or destroyed us in terms of our state responsibility
Yes.
of electing our representatives to go and deal with our issues? Is the Christian moral reflected in us as a people?
Of course, I can say that Christianity, when you look at it and critically analyze it in Kenya,
yes,
when it comes to exercising actionization of Christianity, that is where we have failed.
mm-hmm.
We have failed in the sense that we talk about Christianity, but we don't really exercise Christianity. Because when we exercise Christianity, it will be seen in terms of our morals, in terms of our practices, in terms of how we execute our responsibilities, in terms of how we relate, in terms of how we see the need to help one another as a society.
Yes.
Now, the Christian leadership has failed in a number of ways, because there is the role of church in terms of the moralization of the political life of the country.
Yes.
Whereby the church ought to be giving a moral vision with regard to helping the politicians who are members of various denominations in the country.
Yes.
Where they are going wrong, they ought to be giving them moral vision and also helping them to understand that there is need for them to generate good morals that can help the country to achieve the development goals.
Yes.
And also to make sure that the service deliveries are done appropriately so that no Kenyan is left out.
The other day, the clergy were being questioned about the arambes which is done in churches, the donation, and the other politicians who are not really well with this called it money laundering in the church. How do you find it?
Of course, you can call it money laundering in the church, but I want to say this. There are two perspectives with regard to looking at how money is given in the church.
Yes.
When you look at the Bible, there is an instant in the Bible whereby a prostitute went to Jesus and she gave her alabaster oil.
Mary Magdalene.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know, when you look at it, the disciples told Jesus that, are you aware who this woman is?
Yes.
And why do you allow her to do such a thing? But
Yes.
Jesus made a statement that wherever this gospel shall be preached, the name of this woman shall be mentioned. Now, at the same time, when you go to what we call wisdom theology, the book of Proverbs, there is a text in that book that is indicating that the wicked will gather the wealth and take to the house of God. So sometimes you look at it from a theological perspective, but when you look at it also from a moral perspective, you see that there should be a way that the leaders of the church ought to also know where these individuals or the politicians are getting their money from. That is a moral responsibility that they have. But there is also a theological perspective. So I tend to think there's that element of contradiction when you look at the theological perspective vis-a-vis the moral perspective. Because when it comes to moral, then they ought not to be taking that money.
Okay, Mr. Bisalom. So will we say that money is a religion in itself?
Money, to some given extent, it is a religion. It all depends with how you look at it. Because if it is an object of worship, and there is a way, the search for money is like taking all your time, and without it, you cannot survive and do any other thing. Then it takes the center stage of your life. And then before you know it, it becomes a religion. And that is why I tend to think it is referred to as the worship of Mammoth in the Bible.
Okay.
Yes.
So one of the great scholars by the name Karl Marx said that in a capitalistic system, there is accumulation for accumulation's sake.
Yes.
Which means it is a silly accumulation.
Yes.
How do you resonate with this?
Yes, what I can say, that is what I might call the paradox of wealth accumulation, whereby you end up dying and leaving it, and you might not know who is going now to consume it.
Yes.
So the element of accumulation of wealth being paradoxical at the time of death is also there, but I don't know how people do consider it. It varies from one individual to another. Because there are people who, after acquiring much wealth, they get into philanthropic activities, whereby they support various organizations. But there are people who might acquire that wealth and keep it for themselves.
But don't you think by being philanthropic, these are also one of the conduit ways of making this money look legitimate?
It all depends in terms of assessing the process that led to you acquiring wealth. Because there are people who got their money from their own concerted efforts. But there are people who got their money through corrupt deals. So it all depends. We cannot say that all those that are rich got their money through corruption. So we will begin to interrogate and investigate how you got your money so that we can arrive at the understanding that you are now exercising the philanthropic activities so that you can make your money clean. But if you got it through adjoining means, then we might say that you are just there to give service to humanity so that you can see how you can push
to gather more influence on your side.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all for today. And maybe Mr. Bisalom, you can say a parting shot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baron, for hosting me in your show. And what I can tell Kenyans and the globe at large is that corruption is a cancer that is eating the society. It is interfering with the economic life of the society, the political life of the society, the moral life of the society. And we ought to come up as scholars and look into how we can educate the citizen in terms of how to at least reduce corruption as a vice in our country and on the continent of Africa at large. Thank you very much, Mr. Byron.